Good evening. I am calling this meeting to order. The time is 5:30 p.m. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, this meeting is officially open with the quorum present. Okay. At this time, we will hear public comment addressing items on the agenda. Let me remind you that because of restrictions by the Texas Open Meetings Act, board members may not engage in a verbal exchange about a subject that has not been posted. We will listen and take notes, but the board is prohibited from responding to any inquiries made during a board meeting on any topic not posted on the agenda. However, the board may reply with 1, a statement of specific factual information given in response to the inquiry, 2, recitation of existing policy in response to the inquiry, or 3, direct a person to visit with staff about the issue. No presentation may exceed 3 minutes unless the speaker has prior approval for additional time because of the use of a translator. Speakers who require the assistance of a translator are permitted double the allotted time of speakers who do not require the assistance of a translator. As soon as the speaker begins speaking, the time clock will start. Our first speaker is Mike C.
Good evening. I'm addressing agenda item 3B, the safe return to in-person instruction. I've heard some disturbing information pertaining to Fort Worth ISD. Who's heard of the broken windows theory? The broken window theory states that visible signs of disorder and misbehavior in an environment encourages further disorder and misbehavior, leading to serious crime. So let's say there's a protest for open borders and someone like United Fort Worth or the John Brown Gun Club throws a brick through a storefront and are not held accountable. What could that lead to? Maybe looting, arson, murder? Or how about when children in high school smoke weed on campus and are caught? Do we just slap them on the wrist and tell them, don't do that again? Do we get the police involved? Do you hide it from the police or parents? How do you protect the rest of the student body if this behavior is tolerated and treated lightly? I ask you, where could this stance lead to? Harder drugs on campus? Drug turf wars with the dealers on campus? Gun violence possibly for the control of drug sales on campus? I ask you to think very carefully when you address drugs on any Fort Worth ISD campus for the safety of the student body and the future of our city, state, and country.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts this evening. Now we're to number 3 on our agenda, reports and presentations. The topic is learning and leading, support structure and division priorities. Dr. Ramsey.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank our trustees because this year we've taken on a new calendar and the trustees worked over about a 6-month period to look at how they could take deeper dives into the work that's occurring in the school district. And tonight is the first of many workshops where they can spend an hour or 2, or I guess as many as you'd like, taking a deeper look and asking questions and having thoughtful discussions on how we as administration are meeting the goals that you have set for me. This evening, we're talking about, arguably, I will say, the most important of topics, and that's learning and leading. Behind the 4 associates that I'll introduce in just a moment, you have the executive directors within the new branch or division that are made up of the executive directors that used to be in several different branches of the organization. They are here to answer questions. They are here to show unity, and they're here to show that it's a new day and a new way of doing business in Fort Worth ISD. We also have 2 esteemed principals that will be joining a little bit later to talk about all of the work and all of the planning that's happened over the summer, how it actually affects them and what the work looks like at the campus level. Because at the end of the day, any amount of planning that we do, strategy we put together, it means nothing if it can't be executed at the site level by us providing support and eliminating barriers for them to do their work. So with that, I am going to introduce our 4 associate superintendents who each have a service learning network. I know they'll probably introduce themselves as we go, but I'll just say Charlie Garcia, Melissa Cali, Dr. Tamika Brown, and Dr. Gracie Guerrero. And with that, I turn it over to our esteemed colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey, for that introduction. Good evening, President Rodriguez, Superintendent Ramsey, and Board of Trustees. And also, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank the Forward ISD staff here present. Together, the 4 learning and leading associate superintendents will paint a picture for you as to what the learning and leading work will be. As mentioned earlier, I serve Learning Service Network 3. I am Dr. Gracie Guerrero, and I also spearhead the work that is going to be done and that is already being done for emergent bilingual learners. Very excited for the work that is planned, and certainly with the work that I've seen the teachers be engaged in already today in their staff development. I do want to be able to acknowledge that the presentation you'll see today is just part of the beginning conversation, and just wanted to be able to give you an aspect of what that would look like. And certainly, I'm a firm believer that we learn as we go, so definitely fine-tune aspects as they are needed. So thank you for your attention, and as Dr. Ramsey said, what I believe to be one of the leading works that we're going to do here in Fort Worth ISD. So we aim to be able to go over not just the structure of the division, but also being able to get you acquainted with the school performance framework and the status of schools, get you a little bit to know what data will be used and how it would be processed to be able to identify what you'll hear a lot about going forward, opportunity zones, which are targeted schools based on data that will be able to give more love and support, and also the opportunity groups, which are the groups that we have identified through data that will be able to be monitored throughout the year so that we are sure that we're targeting the right thing that they need at just the right time, obviously being able to use the resources that are available. Towards the end of the presentation, you'll also see how we have individualized the learning and leading support plan and how that involves the targets that we've set as a board in alignment with the goals that we have set also for our team in division. So those are the intended outcomes, and we'll be glad to be able to get some feedback and, of course, questions to ensure that we did meet those outcomes as well. In being able to first target and give you that big picture of what the reorganization looks like and why, I know that in the work that has been done here in Fort Worth in the past, we not only took into consideration feedback that was given to Dr. Ramsey, but as being able to look at the data available at the time, and then also being able to partner with external stakeholders just to see what innovative structures and frameworks are there across the country that will lead to such a job as that we are tasked with here of being able to improve the outcomes of students. So hence the learning and leading team developed. I've been part of different organizations in which we do have two different areas. One that leads with the operation, with the leading, and then also another side that leads with the academics. Certainly great things happen in those organizations, but what tends to happen is that we tend to operate in silos and sometimes work in parallel, maximizing efforts, maximizing resources, but not necessarily working and dancing together. So the goal is for both the operations side, the developing the site leaders, and also increasing the quality of instruction in classroom to work in tandem so that we can best support the site administrators and be able to allocate the resources not only where they're needed, but where we know will make the best impact based on the support that we have available to the sites. We certainly want to be able to really look at not only working together with those two aims, but also working within cabinet ourselves to be able to collaborate with other department heads, such as technology, such as budget, to be able to agree on the goals that we have set for different, as I said before, opportunity zones and the opportunity groups so that we can best maximize those resources, with the ultimate goal being that we're going to be able to increase student outcomes where they're needed the most. And again, based on the data that we have available, and we'll walk you through that process as well. At this time, we would like to give you an opportunity to connect faces and names, and I know that I'm working on that as well as I meet folks. Sometimes I have to ask for grace from people and say, I know that I've met you before, that we've met. Will you please tell me your name again? And I have to work on some way to be able to practice. But we do want to be able to give you that opportunity. And you have that on the handout. We were able to take some headshots this year to be able to connect. But I also am glad that the folks are here so you can best be able to see what they do, what areas they work with, and also what programming they are supporting, because you'll be able to see that each of us is overseeing not just the leading part, which really coaches and supports the principals and the site administration, but also the learning part that oversees programming as well. So at this time, I would like to ask the associate superintendents if we can go in order by networks. Ms. Melissa Kelly, if you can be able to introduce your executive directors, please. And if the executive directors could stand as your name is called, so that way they can be able to personalize your name and your face as well. Thank you.
We're learning to work these microphones as well. Thank you for your patience. My name is Melissa Kelly. I'm the Associate Superintendent over Service Network 1. And with us here tonight, we have the Executive Directors in Service Network 1 who are overseeing elementary campuses, Mr. Todd Coppice and Christine Renteria. You guys can stand up. We also have our Executive Director working with secondary campuses, Dr. Miguel Serrano, with us tonight. And then we also have Ms. MJ Bowman, our Executive Director over Humanities and Academic Support Services in Service Network 1.
Thank you for that. And if we can have
Absolutely. Thank you, Melissa. Good evening, trustees. Charlie Garcia, proud servant leader for Network 2. I'm so proud of the executive leadership team that I'm about to present to you all, and I appreciate the time for the introductions. Secondary School Leadership Executive Director, Dr. Christopher Barksdale. Elementary School Leadership Executive Director, Kristen Reeves. Elementary School Leadership Executive Director, Guadalupe Cortez. Our College and Career Readiness and Enrichment Executive Director, Dr. Lisa Castillo. And lastly, our Math and Science and Professional and Innovative Learning Executive Directors, Diane Lopez Martinez.
Dr. Brown.
Good evening, President Rodriguez, members of the board, Dr. Ramsey, Tamika Brown, Associate Superintendent over Network 4. And I am super excited to introduce the team. They are the dream team, and we are going to make it happen this year. First, we have the executive directors that are serving in school leadership. Dr. Susan Hernandez will be serving the secondary schools, Eastern Hills, Polytech, South Hills. We have the two executive directors that will serve elementary campuses, Deborah Traylor and Dr. Olga Romero. They are also here. And we also have two executive directors that will be serving in other areas, including specialized learning. That is Audrey Thomas. And finally, in guidance and counseling, Dr. Sandra Benavides. So we are super excited to serve the students and families of Fort Worth ISD, and the best is yet to come.
Thank you all for those introductions. And again, I am Gracie Guerrero, and I'm the Associate Superintendent for Service Network 3, and the executive directors who work with me in the leadership front are Dr. Doreen Benavides and Ms. Valencia Rines at the elementary level, and Ms. Gloria Martinez at the secondary. And also spearheading the work in service of our emergent bilingual students is Dr. Marie Mendoza. Thank you. So those are the faces that go with the names that you see. And as Dr. Brown candidly said, we are really working hard to be able to really maximize the resources and the efforts of staff. And we are so very proud to serve alongside the executive directors who are helping us in that charge. I mentioned earlier the goals that we have, and the overarching umbrellas being able to support site leads, to develop them to become the instructional leaders in their area, and then also being able to increase the outcomes. Certainly working under the umbrella of the 5 goals that we have as part of the Lone Star governance goals, but then also being able to embed in that the identified goals that we have with increasing student achievement in reading, also math, and also college and career readiness as well. We took those, and we also have established 4 priorities to leverage the best practices that are proven to increase student achievement. And you're able to see those under the learning and leading priorities. In a nutshell, being able to maximize the resources, being able to identify the return on investment, be able to support and be of service to the sites, and really be able to use data to differentiate that support that we give them. And this is a visual of just what that will look like and what it would trickle down. And towards the end of the overall presentation, you'll have a chance, as Dr. Ramsey said, to be able to hear from the principals as that support that we have established, identified via data, being able to work with the site administration in their as them being developed as instructional leaders, being able to maximize the resources, being able to use data, and being able to lead through the monitoring process to ultimately be able to increase the outcome of all of the students, being able to pay close attention, we as a district, to the opportunity zones, and then the campus at their sites through the opportunity groups based on data as well. And this is a great transition because now Dr. Tamika Brown will now review the school performance framework, and that's the guide, the tool, the process that we'll use and will be built with available data to determine the support that will be provided for opportunity zones and opportunity groups. I know that different questions may come to mind as we go through this presentation. I know that you have sticky notes and a writing pad there. I welcome you to jot down those notes so that you don't forget them. If you're like me, I forget something if I don't write it down. But more than likely, those questions will be addressed throughout the presentation, and we'll be more than happy to address anything else. We just want to be able to continue the flow and be able to give you the big picture and overview that we want to be able to do so. And we'll be more than happy to answer anything or do any clarifications that you will need at the end. Thank you so much.
All right, so the second goal for our workshop this evening is to introduce the school performance framework. So what is a school performance framework? I'm glad you asked. So it's a tool. It's a tool that provides us with a single definition, if there is such a thing, for school quality. And there are so many different ways to measure success in a school district. And it's so easy to become data rich and information poor. What this school performance framework allows us to do is to have that definition of quality that serves all of our campuses extremely well, that allows us to then provide support that matches the needs of the students and of the campus. So for the next few minutes, we'd like to share with you our school performance framework and ultimately share with you how we're going to respond to what we have learned from the data in our school performance framework. Now, I do want to share that as background, this work started a few years ago. It didn't just happen the last few weeks. This work started a few years ago, and what you will see today is a result of lots of input from our elementary, middle, and high school principals that have worked with experts in the nation that have done this work across large urban districts all over the nation. And they have helped us design a framework that makes sense for our school district. So we're really excited to share this with you. We do have neighboring districts that have school performance frameworks, Aldine ISD, San Antonio ISD. So we're excited to now have a school performance framework, that single definition of quality right here in Fort Worth ISD. So why would we even want this? I shared that, oftentimes we can be data rich and information poor, and we absolutely do not want to be that organization. We want to be a learning and growing organization. We want to be an organization that is laser focused on the right things, and that is making sure we are supporting students and supporting campuses the way they need to be supported. And our school performance framework is built on state accountability. That is important. But it simultaneously focuses on student growth with our norm reference assessment, the NWEA MAP assessment. Our board goals, the board goals that you all have created for the district, are anchored using the NWEA MAP assessment. And additionally, our school performance framework, you'll hear us call it SPF, it places a value on student experience. So we look at metrics like teacher attendance, student discipline, and also perceptual data like feedback from our students, parents, and teachers. Now, for this school year, the reports that we will share in just a moment do not include the perceptual data. It only includes empirical data, but going forward, we will include the perceptual data also. But let's take a look at the school performance framework. So we're actually going to share with you two sample reports, and these are reports from within the district, and we're going to take a deep dive just to understand what the school performance framework communicates to the school community, and how it will help us drastically improve student outcomes. So if you will just pull out the single copy that is a report. On one side, it's an elementary school report, and on the other side, it's a high school report. If you will just pull that out, I'd like to walk through what you're seeing. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see School Performance Framework Elementary School Report, and you will see School
Dr.
Performance
Brown.
Framework High School Report.
Dr. Brown, we haven't received it yet.
Oh,
Then we get in there. She got it. We get in there.
you might need that for my presentation. Thank you so much. All right, so does everyone have this single copy? Okay, so I want to point out a few things to you because I really want to orient you to what you're looking at. Let's start on the elementary side, the elementary report. The first thing I want to point out is at the top right, you see preliminary using 2022 STAR. The reason this is, the reason you see preliminary is because we built this using 2022 accountability data. We will have our final ratings for 2023 in September, and we are, when we get those final ratings, we're absolutely going to use the current 2023 ratings to adjust the reports. But we want you to know that the only difference in what we have now and what will happen when we get the 2023 data is that we will, our support will evolve. For campuses that fall backwards, we're going to push in and provide more targeted support. For the campuses that accelerate, we're excited about that. We're still going to provide support. We still have Tier 1 support that all campuses will receive, but what you will see is that campuses that are moving forward, they're moving in the right direction, we're going to allow them to have just a little bit more autonomy. So that's kind of the difference, but we absolutely could not wait to September to learn how to support our campuses. So that's the reason these reports are relevant to our work today. So on this elementary report, the other thing I would like to point out, in this middle of the page, you will see that the report has two big sections. One, educational excellence, that's 80% of the overall score, and also school experience, that's 20% of the overall score, okay? And you'll notice that in educational excellence, there are metrics that are important to our school community. These are the metrics that were identified by our principals and by these experts that help us to define quality in our schools. So you'll see the STAR information, absolutely, that's the accountability, but you will also see MAP growth. You will see fluency, because especially at the elementary level, we want to increase those foundational skills so that our students are reading on grade level. You will see that we're looking at language acquisition and making sure that students are moving up a level with TELPAS. So you will see all of the things that we've prioritized that will ensure that we're focused on the right metrics that are going to move the needle on student outcomes. Simultaneously, if you look at the bottom with the school experience, it's absolutely important for teachers to be in the classroom with our students, so teacher attendance is important. You'll see that prioritized. You will see student attendance prioritized, discipline, and as I shared with you a minute ago, we will eventually add perceptual data from our students and our parents and also our teachers. The other thing I'd like to point out, at the top of the same report, you'll see that the way that the rating is communicated is with stars. And this was as a result of feedback from our amazing principals. We want to assume positive presupposition, and the principal said, if we're going to communicate how we're doing, we want to add stars versus communicating in a way that may appear to be punitive. So the reason this is communicated this way is because we want to share how we're earning stars and getting better, because that's absolutely the goal. In just a moment, I'm going to talk about the opportunity groups. But before I do that, on the back side of that same document, I just want to point out that the difference in elementary and secondary, and specifically high school, is what we are measuring. You'll notice for high school, we're still looking at STAR performance. We have our EOC exams, EOC algebra, biology, English 1, English 2, all of the EOC exams. But we're also looking at college readiness. If you notice, we're measuring PSAT growth in math and reading, essentially. We're looking at the percentage of freshmen on track for graduation. We know that if we keep freshmen engaged and we ensure that they are successful that first year of high school, they're more likely to finish high school. So we absolutely want to make sure freshmen are on track to graduate. And still, we are measuring TELPAS, language acquisition in the district. And finally, you'll see graduation rate and 4-year graduation rate. Okay, we want to make sure our kids graduate in 4 years. That's absolutely important. School experience, you'll see the same information. So if you turn, and the other thing I want to point out, we intentionally chose these 2 samples because for the elementary, as an example, this elementary example, this is a school in our district, and one would perceive that this particular school would have fewer stars because of the demographic makeup as well as the location, but you'll notice that this particular campus has 4 stars because this campus is doing amazing things for students. Simultaneously, the high school that was identified has a really good reputation, is a great school, but it has 3 out of 5 stars. And what we want to elevate for the purpose of this conversation is that it doesn't take away from that campus being an amazing campus, but what it isolates for us as a leadership team is how we can push in and give very intentional and specific support to this already amazing campus so that it can continue to be amazing. So the idea is that we have support regardless of the campus and regardless of the location of the school.
Before Dr. Brown moves on, the trustees are probably really familiar with a lot of these metrics because they're your Lone Star governance goals and your goal progress measures, right? So everything integrated, all working in the same direction towards providing support to our campuses. Thank you.
Okay. So if you will turn back to the elementary report, I want to highlight a feature that's critically important to the work, and that is the opportunity group. And we want to highlight this feature because this opportunity group represents the 25% of students showing the least amount of growth. If I can call your attention to the slide that you see on the screen, regardless of a campus's accountability rating, they can have an A, a B, a C, or an F. They still have an opportunity group because every campus has 25% of students that are showing the least amount of growth. So every campus has an opportunity group. The other thing I want to convey, we isolated 4 campuses in our district. This is the campus from Network 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we want to explain how the opportunity group looks at each campus. Now, when you see these numbers, and I'm going to pause so that you can kind of digest what you're seeing on the screen. But when you see these numbers, it doesn't necessarily represent 100% of the students in the opportunity group. But we want you to know that we're being intentional about supporting the student groups that are struggling the most. We are aware of the student groups that are struggling, and we are going to be responsive to that. As an example, if you look at elementary school number 1, okay, out of the 22 students that took the MAP test in that elementary school, you see 12 of those African American students are in the opportunity group. Okay, not all of the African American students are in the opportunity group, but 12 of them are. Also, emergent bilingual. You'll see that 27 students are are tested, but 16 of those emergent bilingual students are in the opportunity group, okay? Students with special needs or students in our special education program, 64 tested, 38 are in the opportunity group. Why is this important? Okay, it's important because, again, we have to be intentional about supporting all of our students in Fort Worth ISD, and we have to know where they're struggling, and we have the information to do exactly that. So we wanted to highlight the opportunity group because we want you to know that we are paying attention and we are going to be responsive. So how will we use the SPF? Really, it's two ways, okay? It's going to allow us to continue to set the priorities for the work, as well as develop accountability and support plans. Those really are the two significant ways we're going to use SPF. How are we going to prioritize the work, and how are we going to support our campuses? Because that's our job, to support the work. So we are, as I shared with you, we are going to be getting 2023 final ratings in September, and when we receive those ratings in September, we'll be prepared to provide you a profile that kind of gives you ratings for each of your districts, all of the campuses in each of your districts. But for right now, we are using this data absolutely to respond to the needs of our campuses, to get the year started and to execute the support. But we absolutely want to provide you that additional information once we get the final ratings. So now I will turn it over to my colleagues, Melissa and Charlie. They will share how we'll use this school performance framework to support our campuses.
All right. Now we're going to talk about the Learning and Leading Support Plan. I know we've given you guys a lot of information, but we have shared with you the school performance framework, how schools were identified, and now we're going to look at the levels of support that are offered to our schools. We want to make sure that we note that all schools will be put into one of these three buckets. So every single school will be categorized, and so everyone will receive some level of support. We're using the three-tiered system just for ease. The tiered support model will allow us to provide specific tailored assistance to meet the student needs at each campus. We're intentionally going to deploy resources to the campuses that need it most. We will provide additional training opportunities for those identified campuses. Tier 3 specifically will be comprised of the highest need. So those campuses will be referred to as opportunity zones, as we talked about earlier, opportunity zone schools. Principals at these schools will get increased opportunities for training, specialized coaching, and additional resources. Tier 2 campuses will receive targeted student group support. And our Tier 1 campuses are those campuses with the least amount of need. Again, they will still be getting support, but the priority in those Tier 1 campuses will be to close the achievement gaps between the groups. So Mr. Garcia now is going to tell you a little bit more about our plan.
Thank you, Melissa. As you know, there's a sense of urgency in our district and all districts to ensure that all kids get the right education, that all schools have quality seats. And so what you've heard today and the SPF framework and the vision for the LLL department is solely for the benefit of our campuses. We exist to serve our principals and teachers on those campuses. What the reimagined support narrates is, in a lot of ways, exploiting what we have done well and introducing some of the new explorational pieces that we're going to continue to build on. The first item is a reintroduction of unit assessments. Research says that on grade level instruction is one of the single greatest levers to ensuring that we get student success. We need to understand how our students are doing on a consistent basis. That means having the right information and knowing how to react to the information timely and efficiently. We have a scope and sequence that provides support to our teachers, and the unit assessments are already in development. What we want to do is take it a step further, ensure that we are providing that support so that our teachers and principals can provide additional support in the four corners of the classroom. An investment in leadership development, we need instructional leaders on campuses that are bold and that can really understand instruction and can lean in when they need to. Our teachers need the support. Assistant principal and district coaches collaborating on ensuring that all kids are successful. The pipeline for instructional leadership needs to start here in Fort Worth ISD. And our assistant principals will be getting additional support, and they'll be working in tandem with our learning and leading coaches. Explicit use of high quality resources. As mentioned, we have the resources in play. We have to understand how to use those resources efficiently. And understanding that means that we have to be competent in how to use them. Aligned progress monitoring systems may be one of the most important pieces that we want to reimagine. That means accountability with an abrazo. And what I mean by that is accountability with a hug. We have to educate, support our folks, but we have to hold people accountable for doing what's right for kids. And that does not mean twice a year or after state accountability comes out. That means daily. This reimagined support leans into what we are calling the opportunity zone, which are schools, they need an additional layer of love, an additional layer of support. We have struggling campuses, and if you heard the word turnaround schools, we have some turnaround schools that need additional support. The leadership on those opportunity zone schools will be provided additional professional development. They will be afforded the opportunity not only to interact with their colleagues more consistently, but also with their executive directors and instructional coaches from the DSC. What that would look like is consistent observations of teaching practices and leaning into the support, because we need to support teachers more than ever, and we can't do that if we're not confident. Human capital support leans into the modality that learning and leading needs to be hyper responsive to those campuses, and setting a calendar in place that ensures that we are strategic in our visits to those campuses and that we are articulating a yes, we can do it, no excuses, we're going to get it done kind of attitude. And lastly, targeted supports. What you heard today for the SPF means that we have to be like a surgeon. We can't get this wrong. A third grader that is in third grade this year only has that 1 year to be a third grader. We cannot lose a year's worth of instruction. We cannot lose a week worth of instruction. So that targeted support comes in many facets, but what we want to do is ensure that we're able to educate the right people at the right time so that they can act on those supports that are needed.
All right, we have reviewed how campuses are identified, the levels of support that students will be receiving, and now we're going to talk through what that could look like specifically in the areas of math and literacy. Opportunity zone schools will be grouped and
Can you
supported.
please speak into or move the microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. You want me to start again?
I think you're good, just for the viewing audience at home.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Opportunity zone schools will be grouped and supported by expert content coaches. Content coaches are going to differentiate teacher one-on-one coaching determined by the student need. Now, what that might look like for a student is they might start to see someone coming in and co-teaching with their teacher. That might be something that a student notices that's different. We wanted to make sure that we highlighted things that could be different for students to see. Monthly collaborative planning sessions will be provided to teachers at Opportunity Zone campuses. These will be focused on standard-based planning while utilizing student data to help drive their instruction. And an example of this might include teachers gathering in professional learning communities with their campus administrators. So that might be something that's going to look different for teachers. They might be doing more collaborating. There might be more administrators that are involved in their professional learning communities. That's a change that we are hoping to see more of. We will also work to ensure that the allocation of time and resources and coaches to Opportunity Zone schools are given an added layer of effective implementation, and that support is there for them. Utilizing our embedded resource assessments, teachers will be provided to support in analyzing that student data. So an example of this might include after-school student tutoring groups that are identified based on that data. It could also include Saturday Learning Quest being offered for Opportunity Zone schools and groups. We've given you guys a lot of information. It's great, as Dr. Ramsey mentioned, to talk about things in theory, but we also want to give you a chance to hear about what's going on, the actual work that's being done at the sites.
And as we move forward and plan for the coaching, for the development, oversight, administration, we are applying both a long-term plan in which we build on the skill set that we're honing to how to implement at the site, but also a just-in-time type of training for principals and assistant principals so that they can be able to best implement without being overwhelmed and being able to use the data that's available. So I'm very excited that we have 2 oversight principals here. We have a representative from an elementary school and a middle school, a secondary school. So I want to be able to bring up to the podium Mr. Ricardo Alvarez Uzcategui, and he is the principal at M.H. Moore Elementary School, and also Dr. Chana Barrett, and she is the principal at Jacque Middle School, and they're both here to be able to talk about the work that they're already doing, talk about the plan that they have going forward, and also share how they are able to target their opportunity groups at their own site and how they are developing and coaching their staff so that together they can be able to transform their school and continue to make improvements. So thank you for being here, and if I can have Dr. Chana Barrett as well. Thank you.
Good evening to Dr. Ramsey, President Rodriguez, the Board of Trustees, and the Associate Superintendents. My name is Dr. Shauna Barrett, and I am the proud principal of Jacque Middle School. And I just wanted to take some time and kind of talk about where we are at Jacque. People often ask me all the time, like, where are we? How's it going? What's going on there? And I often describe it as, you know, imagine a ship that's in the ocean and it is changing courses, is trying to find its way back around. And we haven't turned it around all the way just yet, but we are well on our way, and I'm very, very proud of that. One of the things that I wanted to share with you today is that there is a sense of urgency in turning that ship around. My staff and I are more than willing. We feel the support that we are getting, not just from district, but from our community leaders as well. And one of the things that we have been pushing for is reimagining discipline in ways in which we tier students for behavior, and looking at prevention and early intervention for things that we know have been a problem in the past. I think that's really important, because when you talk about instruction or talk about how can we increase the data, if they're not there, we can't really influence it. We can't really increase it. We can't make those changes and grow in our student growth, and that's important. So we are looking at that multi-tiered student support system. We are using Branching Minds as one of the things that when we had our Leadership Institute a couple of weeks ago, that was one of the things that we really looked into, and what are we doing, and what are those tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 behaviors that possibly we can sit and think about, intervene early, and also get on the prevention side, because we know that prevention will combat discipline issues, right? So that's one of the things that we're doing. In addition to that, we, I think you saw that in the presentation just presented, that there is a sense of urgency in math and literacy support. And you can see that in our master schedule. We have 8 periods per day. All of my students get 90 minutes of math and 90 minutes of reading every single day. And it's important for me to kind of get you to think about how important that is when we talk about tiered support for students, because when we are doing 90 minutes a day, the first part of that period, we are meeting students wherever they are. And that's really important for my campus, but we can't stay there, right? I can't keep them there wherever they are for that 90 minutes. So the next half, we are stretching them and moving them in that Fort Worth ISD curriculum so that we can get them to move wherever they are. We want to meet them and get them where they are, but we can't stay there. We've got to keep moving, and we have to do that every single day, and that's what's happening. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is that we received extensive training in Lead Forward, and it's one of the things that we kind of had an initial training for, but it's something that you can see that's going to help us move forward. And I want to explain why that's so important. For Lead Forward, one of the things that our trainer said in the Leadership Institute is that we really have to look at the processing skills. When you look at the Lead Forward document, you have they purposely sandwich what they call sandwiching the processing skills in between the content. And why are we doing that? Because we want to give students that self-extension support that they can add to their own toolbox. And essentially, I think what we're saying to them is, you may not know everything about the content, but we need to be able to give you those skills that when you come across something that you don't know, you're able to analyze it and you're able to think about it in a way that will help you kind of go through the content and think about it in a better way. So I think it's important that gone are the days that we're just focusing solely on just what we're doing for our content, but we have to give students those tools in their toolbox that to help them to self-extend and to really think about, if I come across a situation where I might not know something, right, I can use those analyzing skills to still think about it and get to the answer eventually. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is that I also am receiving coaching support through AUSL. It's one of the things that I feel like we're working together on. We still haven't figured it out all the way just yet, but I do feel like that is an extra support where I am able to kind of sit with a person and think about, you know, here are the data-driven instruction processes that I might have on my campus. But you've been in a place where you've been in a turnaround campus before, you know what happens with it. Are these things that you feel like are conducive to helping us turn that ship around, or is it something that we can probably sit and think about and try to grow together on? So I just wanted to share those things with you, and I'll stop right there and see if you have any questions for me.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Thank you. President Rodriguez, Dr. Ramsey, trustees, associate superintendents, thank you for the opportunity of being here and tell you a little bit about our story, our MH Moore story, our Fort Worth ISD story. And we are at MH Moore, we believe in making every dream a reality, making every student successful. And we need to see and tell and listen to everybody's stories and bringing the community together as one team, because we are one team. We are one Fort Worth, but we are one team. We need the community. We need our trustees. We need our parents, our teachers, everybody on board, aligned towards a common goal. Something that you have seen in the past during some reading competitions, when we go hard and we go to win. And it's not different this year. But what is different is with the level of supports that we have, we are prioritizing and being more agile and more strategic on how we are going to move the needle faster. And in the areas that Mr. Garcia mentioned before, with the progress monitoring that we are going to use, the data trackers, now we are looking at the granular level. We are looking at every student and we are looking at the specific standards. During our training, a lead forward training, we learned, and it was an aha moment for me. I've been looking a lot at readiness standards, but the in-process standards are setting the cognitive demand and the level of complexity of those lessons. And it was learning for me and for my teachers when I presented this to them. I say, well, we need to look at this. Maybe we have been missing the mark, but now we know better. So we are going to keep moving forward, and we are having our professional learning community meetings. We are going to be looking at the cognitive demand. And many times, something that I learned is the difference between that cognitive demand and rigor. Rigor is part of the cognitive demand, but the cognitive demand is deeper than that. We really need to look at what students are doing, how we are assessing every day with formative assessments, with open-ended responses, what students are producing, and what we are doing with that information immediately to address those needs. An example, our master schedule reflects that. We have, after we complete our Tier 1 lesson, we have space there for every teacher, every content area to enrich instruction, accelerate, and provide supports as needed. With our data trackers, we are going to look at those ticks, but we are going to look at those ticks every day, every week, and look at prioritize the areas that need more support. At our school specifically, we have 54% of students are emergent bilingual. We need to look at that. And today I attended our dual language academy, and I was excited. Many of my teachers were there too, to see how we have clarity on how we are teaching, how we are allocating our language, and how we are using the time in each language, and how we are using, instead of alternating, for instance, every week, we are looking at the topics and how we can deliver the lessons in a way that makes sense and are aligned with our curriculum and with our resources. And our resources, we have excellent resources. And I want to take the opportunity to thank you for approving Mayon again. Mayon give all our community access to a state-of-the-art library. And we have the best library in Fort Worth ISD, but yeah, I like to brag about our school and our community. But it's the power of choice and access. Our students choose the books that they are reading, and now those books are accessible 24/7. It doesn't matter where they are. And our parents really got involved into Mayon, and it was amazing because our time is limited at school, and we were able to make that time pie larger with this tool. The students took books home, but then the books at home, and they have the technology that they need to read at home, and our parents in a way that is convenient also. So it's a thank you for approving it, and we hope to see you at the Kiss Arena again when we end the next reading contest. Continuing with the supports, also something we are excited about is having the unit assessments, having that progress monitoring connected with data that we can use immediately. So it's going to make our organization more agile on how we are serving our students. Another two groups that we are looking at carefully are our special education students. We have a big gap between our emergent bilingual and our special education students, all students, ECODIS, and special education. So we are going to be looking at how our resources are being used, including the resource inclusion supports. We also have Title I interventionists that are going to be allocated to those areas of support. And we also detected that our GT students are not growing as expected. So we created, in partnership with the Gifted and Talented Department, an innovation lab. And anytime you are around in Diamond Hill, please come join us. We have a space where our students will have access to a journalism program. Our students, we are going to be creating podcasts and talk about what they are learning. We have a maker space where students have 3D printers. They are going to be creating and designing elements, and we have that is embedded into our master schedule. We are also starting our robotics program together with our science lab rotation. We have a science teacher assistant that is allocated to that work. So it's exciting, and how with the level of supports that we have at the systems that we have in place, now this opportunity and these dreams are going to become a reality for every student at MH Moore. I also wanted to mention about a little bit the professional development opportunity, and I really appreciate it. I have a new assistant principal. The school year is amazing. He's been through the training, and having the opportunity to sit at the Leadership Institute together was powerful, because we started being aligned. The message was consistent, and we have the eyes on what is important. And I'm grateful for that, and those resources that we have also in how we are now supporting for instance, our dual language teachers with the implementation of Amplify. It's important. There were some areas that were not clear, and now we have more clarity to move forward and keep moving our emerging bilingual forward. Or campus. Well, I like to talk, and I can continue going on and on, but I really appreciate the time and the space for being here, and thank you. Please.
Thank you very much. I think the trustees can be confident that these two passionate principals are just an example of the exemplary leadership we have in the school district. They were selected not only because of their passion, but because the two exemplify integrity, honesty, and courage. Both are willing to step out and say, I need this. Last spring, when Jack Hay, as we know, was transitioning, Dr. Barrett sent an email and said, if we're going to do this, I need your support. I was like, I love this. She knows what she needs at her campus, and that's why we exist. And so I want to thank them. I know they probably want to sit down, but thank you so much for sharing with us. And if I can just kind of, you've heard a lot and a lot of information in an hour, trustees, but what's different this year? You heard a lot of things. You heard a leadership institute where principals and assistant principals had the opportunity to come together, learn with and alongside one another, and build their leadership capacity. We've had our new teacher institute that was occurring. Personalized support per campus based on the student groups they have and the needs that those campuses demonstrate based on data. Not what we think, not perception, not zip code, but what is actually happening. I hope that you heard loud and clear there is a plan. I hope you heard loud and clear that there's been a lot of work happening behind the scenes, and that while we are providing a personalized educational experience to each student, meeting them where they're at, as we heard, and moving them along, we have to do that by having a cohesive system where we don't have desperate divisions, but instead we have unity and coherence throughout the system. You also heard what will be the difference for children this year. Well, that we're not going to count them as a data point, but we're going to look at them in the eye, love them, and meet their need as an individual. If their need is academic, we're going to meet it. If it's mental health, if it's behavioral, we heard a little bit about that. Whatever it is, we have to make it so. And the same with our adults. We've provided 2 weeks now of professional development so that our adults feel prepared for the first day of school. So what feels different, what will be different, learning and leading. This school year, we're going into it with hope, not only for what the school year has to bring, but hope for our community to understand that Fort Worth ISD is the right choice for every child in the city of Fort Worth. Joy, because if we don't come to work and school every day happy to jump up, get out of bed, get dressed, and go, then we aren't going to get a lot of learning done. And a sense of urgency, because we heard tonight that we know we have opportunity schools in opportunity zones, and we have student groups, 3 highlighted in particular tonight: African American, emergent bilingual, and students with disabilities, that need more love, support. Doesn't mean that we stop doing for others. We just heard, hey, we're gifted students need more. We continue the spectrum from those that have the most need to those who may not look like they have a need, but they have a need in a different way by meeting each child individually so that we can have collective success in Fort Worth ISD. And so going into the school year, you know, we continue to say hope, joy, sense of urgency as we become one Fort Worth and one Fort Worth ISD, to get to a place where the perception of a failing school district falls away because we weren't communicating about our intentional plans to meet the needs of every child by building the adults in the system. So I think you heard a lot tonight. I know you have questions. I saw lots of Post-its. And so may I ask first so that we can dismiss our principals, are there any questions in particular for them first? And then that way, if they need to get on, they have professional development tomorrow.
Okay, Mr. Bridges?
My question is for our middle school principal. With much of the changes that we're doing now, what message would you send to parents that, man, this is the one thing that I'm seeing that's different that we're going to be doing this year? For those who are saying, hey, you know what, I need to, who are having to make a decision, and Jack Cave may be in that decision for them.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for your question. I think the one thing that I would say to parents to reassure them is that we have systems. And I want parents to know that the same systems that I would want for my own flesh and blood, if it's good for them, it's great for our students. And so I don't want anything different for my own flesh and blood that I wouldn't want for their students. So we have systems in place that are helping us to move forward and to also progress monitor. I don't think systems are in place for us to just have them and not go back and look at them and see if they're working. I think that we have to revisit them, we have to collaborate, we have to talk with them, talk about them, and that's what we have in place now.
And this is real quick for the elementary school principal. We're coming for our trophy, thank you.
Really? Really?
We already have the space for our third trophy.
Trustee Phillips?
Thank you, President Rodriguez. Yes, for both principals, and either one of you can take it in either order. You know, much like Dr. Ramsey pointed out about, you know, the honesty and integrity and everything that both of you convey. You both have been campus leaders here now. So, you know, Brother Bridges did a great job asking a question about that message conveyed to parents about the one thing, but, you know, I would really love to know the differences between this time last year, you're getting ready for day one of school, and now this time this year. The good, the bad, whatever that may look like, preparedness level, I mean, just, it's a difference. It's drastically different from this time around last year. So what does that look like practically for you as campus leaders?
This time last year, we really struggled with staffing, and this year, I do not have any vacancies. We have hired. That is a big win for my campus. We have hired lots of certified staff. We had lots of long-term subs, and it was really hard. I was just saying to the counselors last year, when we ran our schedule in August, we were right about 17–20%. Our master schedule is done. So we are ready for our students. We're ready to serve them. And I think that's the biggest difference that has happened from last year to this year.
That's awesome.
Yes, I also would like to thank our human capital management team. Our team is stronger this year. I've been in Fort Worth ISD only for 2 years, but I see it in these 2 years. Thank you for the work that you have been doing and the support. We feel it. We feel it, and they are processing our candidates faster. They are bringing better candidates. Thank you. It's excellent work. What I see compared with last year where we were is first we see more alignment. We see one team, and the message has been clear. And we also see better systems in place, and we know how, at this point, before we start, we already know how we are monitoring student progress. We know what to prioritize. We know the level of support that we are going to receive. So we know where we are going. We have the resources for math, for reading. We have for pre-K. Thank you also for the new classrooms. They look beautiful. We just received new furniture. We had pre-K Academy last week, and our parents were beyond excited. We did a red ribbon cutting, and thank you for that. Also creating an environment where all students not only can learn, but you want to sit there and stay there. It's just beautiful, welcoming. But we compared with last year, we know where we are going. We have clarity. We have the tools that we need. We have the right people in the right place. So there is no option. So we are going to be successful this year.
Trustee Dar?
Thank you, President Rodriguez. Thank you to our principals. Both of you, well, one question, one thought that came is it possible, Dr. Ramsey, to share some of the Lead Forward resources? I know there's some websites and some links with the board so that we can investigate that just a little bit. That's a quick link, not asking for a report, just some access to some of these resources.
Yes, ma'am, we'll provide that in writing for the
Okay.
trustees.
Thank you. I also heard, I believe both of you, but I know specifically Mr. Alvarez Yuskatiji, you talked about PLCs, which I know happen on most campuses, and I also know that we envision these to be, here's our third grade, here's our fourth grade, here's our fifth grade, and yet we know that we have students that don't necessarily cleanly fit into some of those parameters. So how are we including our special ed teachers and staff in that process? And for both of this, is a question for either of you or both of you. And then also our GT teachers, how are we including, because we've got to serve all kids. And I appreciate that you brought up our GT students, that we need to meet them where they are and continue to push them beyond where they are too, even if they are far above the level that they're going to be tested at, that we're still pushing the GT students as well. So I guess that's a very long way to ask. How are we including our SPED and our GT teachers in our PLCs?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. And Mr. Fluchet and I met like a month ago, and we adjusted how we are providing the GT services on campus, and now our GT teachers are going to be on campus the same days we are having our professional learning community meetings on Friday, and actually they will be participating in our professional learning community meetings. One priority that I mentioned before is how we are accelerated learning for students that are advanced. And in this case, I would like to remove the label. Because for me, how I see it, all students are GT, the potential is there. And so we need to first make them believe they are, not only with our words, but with our actions. But also providing teachers the opportunities to enrich instruction. And that is not an easy task. So that's part of the reason why we need support, and the GT department is going to be helping us and working with our teachers to provide that support. So another voice, another expert at the table. When we are looking at the lessons that are going to be delivered the following week, we are going to have that component. Also, for the, you mentioned for the special education, or special education staff, they are part of the PLC. So for instance, for us, our highest number is in fourth grade, so our special education teacher is part of that PLC. It doesn't mean we are not looking at the other grade levels, but she will be intentional about being part of the planning of the literacy and the math lessons and the science lessons, and how we are supporting our students. I already had that conversation with her and showing her the gap, because our tier 1 instruction, our gen ed, they continue going up. So, and the thing is, closing the gap doesn't mean that the ones that are high are going down. They keep going up. So that's why you see, because our Tier 1 instruction, our teachers in the classroom continue to improve every year. But the pace, the rate of growth that we see in our special education students with disability is not moving forward at that same pace. So we need to accelerate that. And part of that is going to look like the special education intervention that we provide in the resource room where students are being out and working on their individualized learning plans, but also is going to be enriched because those students need to receive the grade level instruction and also the message that we believe they can achieve.
Thank you.
I would echo my colleague as well. I believe that we really focused on silos prior to this year. And what we are doing is pretty much the same thing. We want our SPED staff and all of our staff to be inclusive, to get the same professional learning that we're giving all teachers in PLC, because we are trying to differentiate, not continue to exclude our students. And I think it's important that we include them in that professional learning. And I think that is on the same line of thinking as to why our principals and assistant principals, while we are meeting together and learning together side by side, because that's what we're doing on the campus. We're doing the work together.
Thank you both. I appreciate that.
Trustees, any other comments, questions? Is this just for the principals?
Yeah, so
Okay,
that we
okay.
can let them
All right.
go about their
Thank you.
evening. Thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to us.
Trustee Bridges, are you? Yeah.
On page 13, first of all, I want to say I love hearing a consistent message that it's a sense of urgency, because it is. And to hear that we're all on the same page and understanding it and how it affects our kids when we look at the highest need students as to where they are, and not just use the word intentionality, but on a daily basis and in the actions of what I'm seeing is intentionality. I'm curious to know, when you looked at the data, when you pulled out that the lowest performing students in that 25%, what did you look at when you looked at the students who were moving forward opposed to the students who were not moving forward? What was some common ground among those?
Thank you, Trustee Bridges, for that question. So slide 13 for our viewing audience is the slide that addresses the opportunity group, and it identifies specifically the the different student groups that we are going to focus on to ensure we're meeting the needs of every child. So Trustee Bridges, to answer your question, when we administer the MAP assessment, we administer it 3 times a year at the beginning, the middle, and the end of year. The results that we get from that assessment identifies very specifically where a teacher needs to start to accelerate growth before the next assessment is administered. And so simultaneously, we're going to be administering unit assessments, because the MAP assessment is a norm reference test. In other words, when students take that test, from a student's perspective, when a student takes that test, if they answer the question correctly, then the question becomes more challenging. The questions that they are responding to become more challenging. And so it allows us to compare Tamika to Gracie. That's what norm reference tests do. We are also going to be looking at criterion reference assessments, which are those unit assessments that at the end of a lesson, or at the end of a unit that a teacher is teaching, they all administer assessments. Those are criterion reference assessments. And what that tells me is the standards that students are learning immediately. So we are going to take both of those data pieces and we're going to respond to the students that need the help. What this gives us is an opportunity to know who those students are. So we give you that example of elementary school 1. We give you the example of African American emerging bilingual special education. Of course, this is not all of the students, but we give you that example so that you know that we have a way to identify the students that need the help, and we've shared with you how we're going to provide the help.
And it may be me, I may not have made it clear. I'm curious to know when you look at those subgroups and the students that were doing well, what was the common thing, no matter what school they came from? If you're an African American student at, I'm just using OD Wide or Arlington Heights or whatever, what do we see in terms of what was working well when we look at the data?
Well, I think that, I mean, my first response to that question is, you know, why do the students perform well and why do some students not perform well? That if we don't ensure that we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum, which means that regardless of the classroom, the level of instruction, the quality of the materials is the same, then you're going to get that variance, meaning you're going to have some students that achieve at high levels and then you're going to have some students that struggle. But what we want to assure tonight, is that we are going to make sure that we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum, that regardless of the classroom, regardless of the campus, that the quality of instruction, the materials that they're going to be exposed to, that the response that the students will receive when they aren't performing, it will be at top. We will do a very good job of responding to the students that have those needs. And so that's it. To answer your question, it really is because if we haven't provided guaranteed and viable curriculum, you're going to see variance in how students perform.
Trustee Dar?
Thank you, President Rodriguez. With the unit assessments, who's creating these assessments? Where are these coming from, and are they calibrated, and do we know the fidelity of the assessment instrument?
Yes, ma'am, great question. All unit assessments have already been created. So there's no new testing going on besides the fact that we're asking our schools and our teachers to follow the scope and sequence, which is already developed. So in our scope and sequence, you have at each unit assessment, and at each unit, at the end of that unit, you have a unit assessment. Those have been created already, and they're aligned to our guaranteed and viable curriculum that Tamika just talked about.
Okay, and a couple of just comments about all of this. I'm excited and hopeful that assistant principals are going to be a part of this process in a way other than just to deal with discipline, because we're not going to be creating instructional leaders on campus if we're just hiring people to deal with discipline. And many of the assistant principals that serve in our schools were exceptional educators in a classroom before they moved into a leadership position. And so I hope that we are capitalizing on some of their skills as an educator. And I'm speaking very globally. Each person is different, of course, and has a different skill set, and that they're not just focusing on discipline, because that's also a hard way to spend your day and every day of your week, doing discipline. Did you want to say something, Mr. Garcia?
No, ma'am, that
Okay.
was not a question, I'm sorry.
Okay, it wasn't a question, but you're welcome to comment to my comment. I also, let's see, I'm really excited to see that Saturday Learning Quest is still a part of Fort Worth ISD. I have visited those programs before. I was very impressed with what was happening on campuses. The students were very engaged. The teachers were really excited to be there with their students, even on a Saturday morning. And so thank you for keeping that. And the other thing is I appreciate this new, I don't know what word I want to use. It's kind of almost like a portrait of a school as opposed to a snapshot of a school. I have said from this dais multiple times that I am not opposed to the STAR. I'm opposed to evaluating a school based on a snapshot test. That our schools and our students and our teachers and our administrators are so much more than what one person can do in a 2-hour period on one day of a school year. I am very glad that my ability to work at the job that I do isn't evaluated on a 2-hour period. I'm very glad that my ability to be a competent and I'd like to think exceptional mother is not evaluated on a 2-hour period in one day out of the year, because we've all had a bad 2-hour period as a parent, if you're a parent. So this is it takes into account so much more than just those snapshot scores. I hope that as this year progresses, that we will have an opportunity to get reports on the campuses that we represent so that we know how the campuses in our district, in our community, and I recognize that I represent a district, but I serve all students in Fort Worth, but I can't represent my community if I don't know how the schools are doing in the community that I represent. And then finally, this is yet another comment as opposed to a question. Clearly, an exceptional amount of work went into preparing this presentation, into putting this plan together, into getting all of the people at the table that need to be at the table to have this conversation. And yes, that was a lot of work. Ironically, though, it is nothing compared to the amount of work that's about to start on Monday, when those kids are in that seat. And that's when the rubber meets the road. And we're going to start to find out if this plan is the right plan for Fort Worth ISD. And so, yes, there is a sense of urgency, but there is also an incredible sense of high expectation that what we're doing is what kids need. I love the focus on kids, not just that they are a score, that they are human beings, because they are, and they are our most important, most valuable resource that we have in our community. So come Monday, the rubber meets the road, and all this planning is going to be put to the test. So I'm pulling for you. I believe. I believe. Thank you.
Trustee Phillips.
Thank you, President Rodriguez. So I guess I appreciate your question, Brother Bridges. I think I know where you were going. And I don't think you got your answer, but it's not your fault, Dr. Brown. So in the sense of, I think you're asking more of a philosophical, theoretical question, right? But I think that's what this does. What this new framework does is allow, because what you're going to want to know is what is keeping a student in an opportunity group and what's leading to the success of those that are not in there. And our new way of looking at it this way, we'll be able to start seeing those trends and what are those common denominators about why someone is steadily in the success in this area of success, and why are they falling into the opportunity group consistently. So I love that, man, and I think I think we'll be able to see that more. We'll see those trends coming. My question is more outside of maybe just the framework within itself, and this may be something that you may want to answer, Dr. Ramsey, but of course any one of our associate superintendents as well. It's really about, there's a lot of new faces, right? And welcome to all the new faces that are here. We really are glad to have you. But I know one of the things that I have noticed in the past in education, period, but also the I statement within Fort Worth ISD, is that there's a lot of overlap on jobs and who does what, right? Everybody does everything. And then, of course, when everybody does everything, nobody does nothing, right? And so I guess really the question I have is, you know, how confident or how laid out is it for all of our new faces, you included, that you know what your job is? Like, that you really understand, I am here to, whatever XYZ is, this is my role. And, you know, for that measure of accountability to be in place. So if something, you know, whether it be something falling through the cracks where we know where to really point because people understand what their job is, or even another level of praise when we're able to say, like, this person really moved the needle because they were responsible for whatever this thing may be. So hopefully you can understand that question. I would love to hear it.
Yes, and it's an outstanding question because that's exactly what the aim of the reorg was. Instead of having, I think I shared with the board that my very second day on the job, we were at a Texas Urban Council meeting, and we were discussing career college military readiness, and I looked around the table and I asked the staff, who's responsible for this? And 4 hands went up, and there was kind of a nervous giggle. Later, we began discussing early education, and I had the same question, tell me who's responsible for that? Well, I have this piece, and I have this piece, and I have that piece. That's what I heard loud and clear when I went out and spoke to our staff. That a lack of communication, a lack of understanding of a through line between this is the question I have, this is the person responsible for it, and how is it when we will know if someone was successful, not successful, what supports we provide them, if we don't actually know what you're accountable to. So in the new structure, there isn't a person sitting in the peanut gallery, I'm going to call you, that doesn't understand what the expectation of them is for this year. Because we all have, while we all have the same goals, it's down to what it means in your role. These are the schools that you are supporting. This is how you're supporting them, or these are the departments that you're supporting district-wide, and this is how we all intersect. While there are areas where we absolutely are going to communicate with one another, at the end of the day, if you're in charge of X program, or you oversee this pyramid and these 3 high schools, let's say, then we fully understand, all of us from me down, what our responsibilities are, the supports we need, and at the end of the day, what my evaluations will look like, right? So that is a huge, I think, difference. There is cross-training, because that is also very important. We do have to work with one another. That's very important. But just taking the example of the 4 service networks. One of the reasons why they're not geographic in nature is because there is divergent schools and communities in each of the networks, so that everyone is responsible for schools that have, we don't necessarily have high socioeconomic schools, but you know what I mean, versus our schools that are almost 100% free reduced lunch, schools that have high numbers of students with disabilities, students who are emergent bilinguals, students who are in our student groups. So each of them have a responsibility, but they are solely responsible for those schools which they supervise. Just like our schools now have, I think the difference is, and I think I'm going to go back to something Trustee Dar said about unit assessments. While they were there, it wasn't a requirement. We use the word commitment instead of non-negotiables. We have commitments that we have. One of them is that we're going to all decide what the most important thing is, and then we're going to do it and do it well. So we have commitments to our specific schools and all student groups, but we're also not going to wait until the end of the year, and these folks aren't going to get evaluated at the end of the year. Publicly, I will say, we had a conversation with the board. I always ask to be evaluated multiple times during the year. I like 4 times because we need to know where we're at during the school year. It's too late at the end. It's a postmortem. Same thing with everyone here. And it's not about breaking someone for you didn't do something. It's, I've noticed today that you weren't your best. How can I push in to provide you support? That's another key, I would say, change that we're implementing in the school district, that we are looking at each other as teammates. As difficult as it is, I have asked all of them to call me Angelica, even though they won't. They will someday, because we need to understand that we work together for children, and that there are days where they need to carry me, there are days where I need to carry them. While we're individually responsible for our areas, collectively, we're all responsible for the success of the children in Fort Worth ISD. So that is something that's different. We do know. They're all like, yes. But it is a team, and it is a team concept.
Yeah, Peanut Gallery, if you don't know your job, it's the time to say so. All right, y'all nodding. Okay, all right.
Trustee Luevanos?
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you for this report. Just to echo the comment from Trustee Dar, we have a plan. Let's make sure that this plan works, because our students cannot wait another week, another year. They get behind. On slide 20 of the PowerPoint, so you mentioned that whenever our teachers need support, that we are going to have somebody there to co-teach with them. How are we going to know when our teachers need our support? Or when are we going to be there?
So speaking a little bit while they decide who's going to answer the question, to Trustee Dar's question, or comment rather, on assistant principals, building a capacity of the campus leaders, assistant principals and principals, to be that lead learner on campus is to make sure that we calibrate with them what does good instruction look like. You've heard a lot tonight, tier one instruction, tier one instruction. That merely means the instruction that happens bell to bell in a school period or in a school day. Our assistant principals and principals will be in classrooms. We will. Last year I modeled 2 days a week out at schools. I'll continue to do 2 days a week out at schools. Everyone that's sitting out there, how many days will you be out at schools? Yeah, at least 2 to 3 days. So every single day, I'm doing Monday and Friday, which means for the most part, they'll do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There will be Fort Worth ISD staff on campuses to provide support and calibration to our assistant principals and principals walking into classrooms, so that there isn't any question about, is this good instruction? How do I assist? And it's not about blaming or shaming our teachers. It is not. It is about coaching and lifting our teachers. There are times where we'll have district level coaches assist. We have campus coaches at various schools, but we have district level support as well. But the most important support at each campus is the principal and the assistant principals. And it's our job, and that's why they spent that time in that leadership training for that first week, to understand what are the look-fors when I go into a classroom to learn, to see student engagement, to see that the standards that are being taught are actually being taught. The student work matches what it says on the board. So it's a collection, so long-winded response to say campus level support as well as district level support, depending on how much need is needed by the individual teacher. And that all goes back to relationships. Do our principals and assistant principals trust us to ask for help? Do they trust us to provide them that support? And do our teachers trust our campus leaders to say, I need a little assistance with this? And so that's why we need to calibrate and work together.
And maybe if we have high-performing teachers, we can all learn from those teachers, or get out of the way so they can go on their day.
100%. That's a part of doing walkthroughs. When we do walkthroughs as campus or district administrators, we're able to see the gamut. We know that we're going in for a snapshot of time, but you start to see patterns. And as we do instructional rounds, first with administrators, and instructional rounds, you're really looking at what the students are doing. Are the students engaged? Are the students learning? Is there evidence of that learning happening? we need to then turn to that next level, which is teachers going into classrooms and providing that support time so that they can learn from one another.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Trustee Bridges, can see if any of the other trustees have something, and I'll come back to you. Do any of the other trustees have some comments, questions? Trustee Lynch?
Thanks, Dr. Rodriguez. Just for clarity's sake, on the service networks, there's 2 elementary school people in leadership. Is that divided by schools or verticals? How is that set up?
So I lean in, I'm getting better with
Yeah,
this.
so.
There are 2 per network, and so then they have separate campuses.
Okay, so it's broken down by campus.
Yes, and we actually have another handout for you guys, and we saved it till the end because we wanted to make sure that everyone had time to listen to everything we were telling you, but it has everything broken down by your specific area of the city. So it'll say, like, if you're, trustee 2, then it breaks down every single campus, who is supporting them executive director wise, and then what network they fall in. So we do have that for you as well.
Okay, awesome. I had one other comment. I appreciate all the time, effort, energy you guys put into this. I think it's a very good opportunity to learn kind of, go-to-market strategy and what's different about things. At the end of the day, our kids are what's most important, and ultimately the parents and guardians of those kids. And so when we talked about this is kind of an internal framework. So if we have a parent out there trying to decide if they want to send their kid to school on Monday, how would they know, which of these resources the school their kid is attending might be receiving?
Yeah, that's a great question that you asked. One of the things that we pride ourselves, and Dr. Ramsey alluded to it earlier, is having coherence across the district. So no, from the get-go, a guaranteed and viable curriculum is going to be what's afforded to all our kids. If there's additional supports, and we do have those supplemental supports, we call them, our instructional leaders on campuses are charged with being that spokesperson for that campus. And so they would communicate with those parents the methodology for supporting those students when they need help. And to your point, we always say that a school system is a 3-legged stool. You have to work with the community and the parents. And so if they don't know the supplemental resources that we're providing, then we're not doing a good job of communicating. So that's really 80% of the battle, making sure that our parents and our community members know what are we utilizing and what support we need.
And I guess just to follow that up, one of the things I've learned kind of spending time in different schools, not every parent is going to show up and talk to a principal or reach out to someone. And so in a public way, how is this information going to be available to people to know, it's an opportunity zone school, or this is how my kid's doing? How will that look?
So while they may not, I am going to push back and say, please, parents, your most viable 2 people for information is your child's teacher and your child's principal. And so please, please, always go to that school website. The school websites will have information. Our principals do a really good job of communicating out with parents, providing not only phone calls, but in writing the programs that are available at their schools. We're usually not the best source because we have to get into what school, what grade, but we'll make sure that we continue to update those websites so that the websites are available, but just keeping in mind that principals do a fantastic job of communicating to families on a weekly basis, and so that they will be provided that information.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Ryan?
A couple of questions on the opportunity groups within this. Are they merged with all the rest of the students in the school, or do we group them by opportunity groups for instruction? How do we do that?
Thank you for that question. So the opportunity group is a subset of all students who take the NWEA MAP assessment at the beginning of the year. So when we assess all of our kids, the students that are performing in the lowest 25%, they will be targeted for support We will support all students because it gives us data about all of our students, but we will specifically target the students that are performing at the lowest the 25th percentile.
So for class period schedules, so students, all students receive Tier 1 instruction, but support interventions and accelerations will be targeted. I like to use the word personalized, but targeted to those opportunity groups.
So how do we, I guess the next question would be, I've got a school that's got a grade of F or right now not rated, and I've got school over here that's an A school. I've got my top 25% might not be, most of them might not be in the top 50% if I were at school B. How do we get the extra help to that F school?
So that's actually the beauty in the system, because we have schools in opportunity zones, and we have opportunity student groups, that lower 25, that lower quartile. So it's both. There are schools that are receiving additional supports based on what their students need, and there are specific students at schools receiving supports, because I hate to use the A through F system piece because it doesn't necessarily mean what we all think it means, but we have students of high need, right? At every campus, we have students that are doing well, and we have students that need to hit the master's level. So it supports that are differentiated both by campus needs and student need.
And just one final thing, and I'm listening to what the presentation was tonight. We talked about setting this up by talking to principals and assistant principals. The one word I didn't hear was we didn't talk to teachers. So how do we include teachers in setting up what you want to do? Because, I mean, they're the ones that know more than anybody. I mean, if I had to go, how do I get kids prepared to do well on the PSAT? Until a few years ago, it's just, you ask John Hamilton, and that's it. And there's no other answer, because he was doing better than anybody in the state and private or public school. That's where I go. So did we include teachers in getting all this prepared?
So framework-wise, because framework is a system, the implementation piece, that's another conversation with, that the principals now that their teachers are back on campus, are now having. So this is system-wide, just like I think we've heard of several times. Where the rubber hits the road is the teacher in the classroom every day. Because we can have the prettiest plan on earth, but if we don't have a teacher that feels prepared, that isn't teaching the standards to mastery, that doesn't understand how to do intervention groups and doesn't understand how to help each child, then it's a pretty plan that we're going to come back next year and say, we had mixed results, right? So our teachers just got back yesterday. Our principals, our campuses will provide support and listen to our teachers about what instruction looks like as they're planning, and as you heard with Lead Forward and teaching to mastery, we always have to have that teacher voice and take those exemplar teachers, and keep in mind also that our teachers are learners also. In every classroom, every one of us can improve, right? And every teacher can improve, we all can improve on a daily basis. And so getting all of those voices together, because ultimately, if our teachers aren't implementing, none of us teach students on a daily basis. So you're spot on. Thank you for that.
I appreciate the report. It's really good. Thank you.
Trustee Martinez?
First of all, I wanted to just make the comment that I appreciate the sense of urgency that I hear repeatedly, and just like Trustee Luabano said, that our students, they can't wait for the supports that are needed. These school report frameworks, are they going to be available on the school websites, and how often? Well, one, are they going to be made public, and then how often will they be updated? Will it be every year based on the STAR and the MAP results?
So currently, they're staring at me because I'm like, because these are preliminary, we don't have 2023 data. These are internal documents for us to provide support to our schools.
Okay.
I think once we have those comprehensive conversations, we would never want to publish something out where our teachers aren't aware, our staff isn't aware. So we'll get those 2023 results, have those conversations, and then move forward and look at what our community probably forums that need to happen and with LSG for our parents to understand, because the last thing I want is an internal document that's really meant for support to become a hammer.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking of how like the campus improvement plans are shared out, so that way parents and community members know what the target needs are, and so. kind of the same
100%.
thing.
We absolutely plan on being transparent. Once there's finalized, we just need to talk through what that looks like, so that we're providing information and so that they know what supports are being provided.
Great. And then just one last thing about the actual supports. So I know like the student groups have been identified, and the teachers will know what supports are available. And I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit, but how is that information getting to parents, or how are we educating them about what supports will be available for their students, and you know, why they need them and how they'll be used?
So I think Dr. Ramsey did a great job of articulating that really the people who know the most about those students are those teachers and those campus principals. And so really our job is to charge them with the information and empower them to go out and have those crucial conversations with the parents, whether it's an individual conference or a forum at their campus. So that's where that work would best be suited.
And just a additional piece, just a point of probably clarity for all of us to remember that we have those community engagement specialists at our campuses, that Fort Worth ISD invested in, so that our parents can understand all of this. So they're supposed to be having, and we have to charge them and say, tell us how we can empower you to have those meetings after school, to sit down and speak to our parents in the language that best suits them, and in friendly language that isn't eduese on what this means, where your student is, and what supports are available for your students, so that they do attend any interventions or the Saturday learning quests or any other supports that are available to them.
Trustee Bridges?
My question just got answered.
Oh,
Trustee Jackson?
I'm good. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. A couple of things. One, you talked about the empirical data, Dr. Brown, and you said that we would add in another data set later, which I presume was the parent and teacher and student information. What does the timeline look like for that? Because I see that as being a global perspective versus just a singular component.
So thank you for that question. So when the framework was designed in the last year, when the framework was designed, it included both those metrics that make up 80%, those academic metrics, but it also included the education, the experience, that 20%. That one metric, the perceptual data, for this year only, it's not going to be included, but going forward, it actually is going to be a part of the framework, and it will be included in that 20%, the education experience, and it will be perceptual data or survey data from students, from parents, and from teachers.
So this year's students, parents, and the teachers on campus, so we'll do it in this school year.
So it's fluid, it's going to be dynamic, it will be added.
It will be added.
Yes.
Okay, and then I had one more question. We talked about we fine tune as we move forward. What does that look like to you all when you talk about you'll fine tune as you move forward? because I like that verbiage, because it means, again, we're not static, and as Dr. Ramsey stated, we're not doing a postmortem. So I really appreciated the verbiage.
Right. So what that means is that when it comes, for instance, for the assessments that are given to the analysis of the data and the trends are identified, we may be able to identify different elements that fit into the system that we didn't necessarily think about, that have yielded high results at some of the campuses. And this is where the interaction piece with the principals coming together every month, with the assistant principals now coming together every month, that we give them time to be able to analyze their processes or systems and their data in their campus. And not only that, but get to reflect with one another so that we can be able to share those best practices. We don't necessarily have all the answers here, but we know that collectively we can be able to identify processes, systems, best practices that best meet the needs of students, with a little tweak here and there for different campuses based on the demographics and the intimate needs that they do have. We can be able to arrive at a system that does address those various needs. So I am actually looking forward, like you are, to be able to see what those fine-tuning is, because of the coming together of the leaders to really express and reflect on the actual happenings, because they're there, and also as they are able to coach their teachers, to listen to their teachers and support their teachers to be able to bring that information back.
Thank you. Thanks to each of you. Thanks to all of you for being here. I know that you've had a very long week. What is it, Tuesday?
It feels like Thursday.
I agree. But I thank you, and this is obviously more work than just 3 weeks or 3 months. This is a year's worth of work that was completed, Dr. Ramsey, and how long? Because you didn't have a year.
Sometimes it feels like a month, sometimes it feels like 10 years. So, no, I do want to say that this is a finalizing a product. I want to give kudos to Dr. Sines, who really spearheaded, and then he really spent January through May, June, really coming together as the associates came on. And previous to them coming on, they worked for free. So there was a lot happening all at the same time. And all the kudos go to all of them and everyone in the Peanut Gallery, because they've believed in vision, they've stayed positive. There's been a lot of change, and there's a lot of hope. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you again. I appreciate each one of you, and I appreciate you answering questions.
All right, thank you for your presentation, and a special thanks to all the EDs that are here for coming out and showing your support. I see this is definitely a team, and I see the momentum. I have talked to several principals and teachers, and the words I kept hearing is energy and excitement for this upcoming school year. So we as a board gave Dr. Ramsey a list of needs, with student achievement being our top priority. And I like what I've heard and the direction I anticipate we are headed. So, and the ESSER 3,
We have a directory that we'd like to pass out to you. We didn't do it previously because we know what's going to happen the minute you get it. There is a lot of data on there, but it is a directory for each trustee that's broken down by trustee area, so that you know who the executive director is, the school, and the contact information for the principal. And I saw someone take a photo. You don't have to take a photo of who's who, because it's all right there. And the beauty is, so is yours. So we know who you are as well.
this is pretty.
Yes. Thank you to the communications team for helping us out and making us look very professional this evening.
So the ESSER 3 and safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of service review will be presented at the August 22nd board meeting. The time is 7:29 PM and this meeting is adjourned.